The Last of Us has always been more than a game. It redefined storytelling in video games. Released in 2013, it was praised for its cinematic narrative, emotional depth, and complex characters. Joel and Ellie weren't just heroes, they were flawed, human, and players experienced grief, morality, and survival firsthand. The 2020 sequel, The Last of Us Part 2, pushed boundaries with perspective shifts and morally gray choices, dividing fans with its darker, challenging story, especially around Abby. And then HBO decided to make it into a show. In this video, we'll examine the show's adaptation, explore its characters, and see how it balances the original's beloved story with Part 2's provocative themes. Joel Miller is not a good man. He is not a bad man either. He is a morally gray guy. What makes him an interesting character is not simply that he does bad things for good reasons, or at least reasons he thinks are good. It's that his decisions are rooted in unresolved trauma. Both the game and the show present Joel as a man shaped and in many ways trapped by the death of his daughter Sarah. The show in particular deepens that psychological foundation in ways that fundamentally reframe how we as an audience interpret his actions. Sarah's death is not just a backstory, it's Joel's origin. In both versions, Sarah dies in his arms by a soldier. Authority and a greater good logic are what take his daughter away from him. 20 years later, when the Fireflies argue that Ellie must die to save humanity, he's reliving that night again. Joel does not believe in abstract humanity anymore. He believes in the person in front of him. Throughout the journey, he repeatedly demonstrates that his loyalty is intimate, not ideological. He protects Tess, risks himself for Ellie. He bonds quietly rather than verbally. When he finally calls Ellie baby girl, it is a confirmation she has become his daughter. From that point on, the Fireflies never stood chance. What the series adds is a clearer articulation of Joel's internal fragility. Joel in the game is more stoic, more distant. The show, however, gives him panic attacks, trembling hands, and most importantly, a revelation that he once tried to take his own life. The scar on his temple becomes evidence of his despair. This addition reframes Joel not as simply hardened, but as someone who once saw no reason to continue living. He is clearly afraid to bond with Ellie and does everything he can to make her dislike him. When he tells Tommy that he's failing and that he's scared, the show makes explicit that Joel's greatest fear is the inability to protect Ellie, because he knows that losing her would destroy him. This, of course, does not mean that Joel talks about his problems to other people, so the choice they made of him going to therapy and talking to the woman whose husband he killed makes very little sense. Joel does not seem to be the type of person who would openly talk about things he did to people he did not know. This is one of those changes that doesn't make him more interesting, but instead changes his character fundamentally, making him feel unrecognizable compared to who he was. One more thing that made me scratch my head in season 2 is how the writers chose to make Joel extra unlikable. Through added backstory, such as the story of Eugene, the series presents Joel not just as someone who is capable of cold brutality, but is also an asshole. Shooting Eugene rather than honoring his final wish to see his wife one last time and then lying about it, even though Ellie was aware of his lies, paints Joel as an overall horrible person. It's very different from anything we've seen before because his motivation for this is simply non-explainable. This matters because season 2 explores Ellie's growing resentment towards Joel. The show seems more willing than the game was to emphasize how deeply his hospital decision fractured their relationship, and I don't think this was the best choice for the story. Some viewers even feel the series is intentionally making him more morally questionable, perhaps to make it easier for us to understand Abby and she did to him feel more justified. Joel's end is brutal, sudden, and unresolved, or so it should have been. But no, let's tell them why it happens before it happens, and make sure to call Pedro Joel handsome twice. It's very important for the story. I don't know about you, but I'm already mad about the writers' decisions made in the show, specifically season 2, and there is so much more to talk about in this video. But for now, I can't help but wonder, what would Joel think of Ellie's revenge? He would most likely understand it, recognize the rage because he was the same, but he would not want it for her, because Joel's entire motivation, however flawed, was to spare Ellie from suffering. He wanted her to live, not just physically but emotionally. So watching her consumed by vengeance would mean his greatest fear came true anyway. Ellie is the heart of The Last of Us, the reason for its existence, and that is why bringing her to television was always going to be controversial. The moment Bella Ramsey was cast, backlash was immediate, much of it focused on appearance. People argued that Bella did not look like Ellie, and that this alone would make her portrayal feel wrong. Unlike a book character, for example, whose appearance is only described, which leaves room for interpretation, Ellie already had a face. Players spent dozens of hours with her, studying her expressions, her mannerisms, her growth. When a character is adapted from prose, audiences accept reinterpretation because imagination is what filled in the gaps. But Ellie was never abstract, she was concrete and familiar. That made the physical difference harder for some to accept, especially when there were actresses like, for example, Kaylee Spaney, who closely resemble Ellie's original design. However, appearance was never the most important part, and season 1 proved that. Bella embodied Ellie's personality remarkably well. The sarcasm, the curiosity, the emotional vulnerability, it was all there. Season 1 also depicted Ellie's psychology perfectly, and perhaps even deepened it a bit. Her immunity has always been more than a plot device. It was a burden she carried. She believed her survival had to mean something. Her greatest fear was ending up alone, and that fear defined her attachment to Joel. This is why episodes 7 and 8, well, mostly 8, are such a turning point. She cares for ninja Joel instead, and does everything she can to make sure he does not become one of the people who abandoned her. When she's captured by David, Ellie's forced to survive on her own. She escapes, kills David, and saves herself. For the first time, Joel doesn't have to save her. He only arrives after she has already saved herself. That moment proves she's capable, violent, and willing to do whatever is necessary to survive. This should have been the foundation for who she becomes later. This is what makes her portrayal in season 2 so confusing. Ellie feels like a regression of that character. Instead of evolving into someone who is not only strong but also hardened by grief and guilt, she often feels passive, uncertain, and strangely detached from her own mission, behaving as if she just went on a road trip instead. This is best shown when you look at her role compared to Dina's. In the game, Ellie is the leader, and Dina is there to support her. In the show, that dynamic is reversed. Dina makes decisions and leads conversations. Ellie follows. She often feels less like the driving force of the story and more like someone being carried through it. This passivity extends to Ellie's violence. In the game, her kills are intentional. Even when they haunt her, they are choices she makes in pursuit of revenge. In the show, many of those same moments feel not just as hesitant, because she hesitates in the game as well, but almost accidental. Her confrontation with Owen and Mel lacks the same sense of agency. Instead of showing someone descending into brutality, the show presents someone who does brutal things by accident. This fundamentally changes how her revenge feels. Ellie is not supposed to be comfortable with violence, but she's supposed to be consumed by it. Some of Ellie's emotional responses are softened in the show. Her reaction to Dina's pregnancy is one of the best examples, and it is something that divided the internet. Well, maybe united against it is a better description, because I don't know anyone who liked this.
I'm gonna be a dad.
In the game, Dina's pregnancy complicates Ellie's mission. It becomes another emotional weight, another reminder of what she's risking. In the show, Ellie accepts it far more easily, and instead of creating tension, it fully removes it. The of the show makes this even more damaging. The 3-month time jump between Joel's death and Ellie leaving for Seattle removes the immediacy of her rage. Revenge is most powerful when it's raw, when it's impulsive, when it feels like the only thing keeping someone alive. By delaying her departure, the show unintentionally suggests that Ellie had time to process her grief, to calm down, to think. But Ellie was never supposed to think clearly. Her revenge was supposed to come from guilt. Joel died before she could fully forgive him. That unresolved relationship is the emotional core of her actions. Revenge is not just about losing him, it's about losing the chance to repair what was broken. And also, this is why her relationship with Dina matters so much. In the game, their bond develops gradually. They're patrolled together, their quiet conversations, their shared vulnerability. Dina goes with Ellie because she loves her. The show changes this dynamic in crucial ways. Dina is present when Joel dies, which shifts her motivation. Her revenge is no longer solely about Ellie. It becomes personal for her too. Combined with the time jump, it weakens the sense that Dina is following Ellie out of love. Instead, it feels like they're both simply reacting to the same event. This will probably have consequences for Ellie's character. In the game, Dina represents Ellie's last connection to a normal life, her last chance at peace. Losing Dina is the cost of her revenge, but in the show, that foundation feels weaker. Their relationship has less time to believably form, less time to feel essential. Is this a failure of writing, a difference different interpretation or maybe a proof for how the showrunner does not understand the material he's adapting. I don't know, but Bella proved in season 1 that they understood Ellie. The emotional core was there, which suggests that the issue is not the performance, but the direction of the character itself. Ellie's story was never supposed to be comfortable. It was supposed to be ugly. Revenge was supposed to hollow her out, to cost her everything. Because Ellie's tragedy is not just that she loses Joel, it's that in trying to avenge him, she loses herself. And the question now is whether the show is willing to follow her all the way to that end. Abby is someone who we did not see too much of so far in the show, and season 3 will most likely be dedicated to her journey and to show us who she is as a person. In a way, Abby is a mirror to Ellie, another girl blinded by hatred, who risked lives of everyone she cared for, who was willing to follow her for her personal revenge. Her journey is not that different from Ellie's, but it is rather controversial. They risked a lot by killing Joel in the second game and then giving us Abby as a playable character. That was a bold move. In the show, Abby is a character that audience has barely started to understand, yet her presence already reshapes the story in fundamental ways. In The Last of Us Part 2, Abby is not introduced as someone we are meant to immediately empathize with, but as someone defined by trauma. The loss of her father becomes the central psychological wound of her life, and revenge becomes the way she gives that pain structure and meaning. It is not just something she wants, it is something she builds her entire identity around. This makes her emotionally hardened, but also emotionally trapped, unable to move forward because her entire sense of self depends on something that already happened. This obsession makes Abby deeply selfish. She prioritizes her need for revenge over the emotional well-being of those around her, ignoring their doubts and fears because acknowledging them would mean confronting her own. Her friends follow her out of loyalty, love, or shared history, but the consequences of her choices fall on them all the same. Psychologically, this reflects someone who is not thinking about a future, only about resolving the past. Revenge becomes less about justice and more about survival, about preserving the version of herself that her grief created. In this way, Abby mirrors Ellie in some way. Both are young women shaped by loss, both willing to sacrifice themselves and others for revenge, and both risk losing their humanity in the process. This is what makes Abby so psychologically challenging. She forces audience to confront an uncomfortable truth. The difference between hero and villain often depends on perspective. The show will likely expand on this, asking viewers to understand someone they're not ready to forgive. Abby is not simply made to replace Joel, but to challenge Ellie and the audience. She exists as a character shaped by the pain of loss and proof of how easily love and grief can turn into something destructive. Adapting a video game into television is never a simple process. Games like The Last of Us are built on time and immersion. Players spend dozens of hours with the characters, not just watching them, but participating in their journey. That interactivity creates a bond that television, with its limited runtime and fixed perspective, has to work much harder to achieve. Because of that, changes are inevitable. The question is never whether changes should exist, but whether those changes serve the story. Season 1 of The Last of Us largely understood this balance. Some of its biggest deviations actually strengthened the narrative. The decision to portray the cordyceps infection as a kind of connected network rather than relying heavily on airborne spores, which we do not know about in season 1, made the threat feel greater. The infected were no longer just obstacles, but part of a larger living system. Later introduction of spores in the show, the way we find out about them, and the presence of more intelligent infected built on that foundation in a way that made the world feel like it was evolving, becoming more dangerous, making the need for cure far greater than it used to be. The show also explained Ellie's immunity far better than the game did, and it became more real than it was ever before. Season 1 expanded some side characters in meaningful ways. Nowhere is this clearer than in Bill and Frank's story. In the game, Bill is a paranoid survivor, alive but emotionally muffled, and Frank exists only as a footnote a-hole. The show transforms their story from basically a comic relief for a player into a full character study. By dedicating an entire episode to their life together, the series reframes survival itself. It suggests that survival without connection is not really living at all. This change doesn't contradict the themes of the original story, it reinforces them. The same approach applies to Ellie's backstory through the adaptation of the DLC called Left Behind. By showing her time with Riley, the series strengthens Ellie's survivor's guilt and reinforces why her immunity matters so much to her psychologically. It gives emotional context to her belief that her life life is supposed to mean something. Even when these episodes slowed down the main plot, they served a larger narrative. They made the world and its characters feel fuller. Season 2, however, takes a very different approach. Some changes do improve the logic of certain events, even though I personally do not like that they decided for Dina to go on patrol with Joel instead of Tommy, but when she calls his name in front of Abby, it makes more sense than Tommy introducing them both to a stranger, which does not seem too believable for a seasoned survivor such as Tommy, but it makes sense for an inexperienced young girl like Dina. The Jackson attack, which happens at the same time as Joel's murder, adds scale and reinforces that danger comes from both the dead and the living. But many of the other structural changes undermine the emotional core of the story. The most significant is the 3-month time jump between Joel's death and Ellie's journey to Seattle. I already discussed how Joel's death affected Dina and Ellie's relationship. Beyond that, there is a scene where the community votes on who should go after Joel's killers. That always struck me as strange, asking a group of town's best people to leave with supplies the town needs, not too long after a big attack, to pursue revenge doesn't really make much strategic sense. The timing and risk are extreme. It feels much more understandable for Tommy and Ellie to take it on personally, since Joel was their family after all. In the game, Tommy leaves first, and then Ellie and Dina follow him. Maria tells them it's their fault he left, emphasizing that she wanted her husband back. The show handles this differently, and Tommy's character is a bit changed in my opinion, which isn't necessarily bad, and it makes more sense narratively for him to go after Ellie and Dina, rather than the other way around. There are some other changes that affect the portrayal of the world itself. Ellie's brief and accidental arrival on the Seraphite Island illustrates this particularly well. In the game, the Seraphites are built up slowly. Their presence is felt long before they're seen. They are mysterious, threatening, and deeply tied to Abby's storyline. Ellie has very little to do with them. In the series, however, Ellie's capture, which originally happens to Abby and actually makes sense in that context, is handled like an afterthought, with her escape occurring so quickly that it lacks significance. Instead of showcasing her skills or resilience, as the series did effectively in the episode When We Are in Need, this scene feels misplaced, reducing both the stakes of the Seraphites for Ellie and Ellie's own agency. Similarly, expanding scenes involving the wolves and their leader Isaac in this season takes away from Ellie's part of the story. While these moments may become important later, their early inclusion weakens the sense that the audience is meant to experience this conflict right now, as it is not essential to Ellie's storyline at this stage. Ultimately, the challenge of adaptation lies in understanding what must remain and what can change. Season 1 succeeded because its changes expanded the emotional truth of the story. Season 2, in many cases, made changes that suggest a misunderstanding of the original narrative. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching my rather long rant about such a beloved story. I really appreciate all your support. Your views, comments, likes, and subscriptions mean the world to me. It's incredible how quickly this channel has grown to 860 subscribers. Thank you so much, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more rants like this one. Love you all, and I'll see you next time.